The Disneyland Resort opened a brand new trackless dark ride this year, and I want to talk about it. I've actually been fortunate enough to ride Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in Disney's Hollywood Studios before I got the chance to ride it, before it even opened at Disneyland Park here in California. So it was interesting to compare my previous experience on the original attraction to my new experience on a ride at one of my home parks. Just to give a brief overview of my experience at the attraction at Disney's Hollywood Studios, I was blown away. I when I watched the POV in March of 2020, thinking I wouldn't be able to ride it, I thought it looked awful. I thought it looked boring. I thought it looked dark and slow. I thought the animatronics with the projected faces looked awful because I had been on Frozen Ever After and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train at that point, and I do not like those animatronics, as most Disney fans don't. But when I actually got to ride the attraction in late summer 2020, I was blown away. The energy of the original Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is spectacular. The projected faces on the animatronics work much better in the animated environment of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway compared to the less animated environment of Frozen, which is weird to say because Frozen is an animated movie, but the attraction at Epcot, the set design isn't as cartoonish as the Mickey and Minnie Runaway Railway rooms. I was really excited when it was announced that Disneyland would be getting the same attraction after I had already ridden the one in Florida. Now that I got the chance to actually ride the version here in California and compare it to my original experience, I'm glad to say that it lived up to that original hype. I was a little disappointed to see that we didn't get any extra show scenes, but we have a far superior queue. I think everyone I've talked to agrees with that. And we do have that extra hallway, but aside from that, the scene progression and the scenes themselves are pretty much identical. The only differences are like in ride layout. Like at the beginning of the version of Hollywood Studios, you turn left earlier, but at the version here in California, we go straight through the park and then we turn left once we go under the bridge and we meet up with Mickey and Minnie. That's probably because of the different shaping of the show buildings, which is pretty interesting. I'd be interested to see a ride layout for the California version. I've seen ride layouts of the Florida version and see how it fits into that show building. I haven't found any pictures of how the updated layout fits into the California show building since it is so much longer and skinnier. But it would be interesting to see. I feel like the Imagineers, instead of giving the California version another scene, they gave us a better queue, which I'm fine with because the original attraction it's great. It didn't need a new scene, so that's just the California bias in me. You know, if the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway here had an extra scene, you'd be able to flex on the Floridians and be like, yo, ours is better. You may have Guardians and Tron, but we have an extra scene in Runaway Railway. Take the L. Anyway, as for the ride as it actually is, it's pretty good. I mean, the pre-show is spectacular. The energy from the cartoon, it's really cute, it's endearing. It's enjoyable to watch. You know, the song it's become iconic already, and the ride has only existed for under 3 years. It's just about to be 3 years old in Florida, and now that we got it in California, I feel like that's gonna be a staple Disney attraction song, like on the level of It's a Small World, which is pretty crazy. I mean, that song is an earworm. You can hum it all day. I've been humming it all day when I've gotten to ride the attraction, I know that. But the way the screen blows up and you get to go through it, it's really awesome. My favorite pre-shows in Disneyland parks or Disney parks have those weird exits. Like you expect to exit out a different door than the one you came in, but like I, probably the hands down the best pre-show Disney's ever done is the second one on Rise of the Resistance, which I don't even know if you can call that a pre-show. It's basically a mini ride, but the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway pre-show has a similar element to that, where you exit the room in a way you wouldn't expect, which is pretty cool. How Goofy interacts with the cast member, it's kind of hit or miss for me. Sometimes the cast members aren't really into it. They're just like monotone. Like you can tell they've done it 30 times in the last hour. But which is understandable, but you know, you just wish that they would have a higher energy. When I first rode the attraction in 2020, due to pandemic protocols in Florida, they didn't even run the pre-show. So the first time I got to experience the attraction, I just walked straight into the screen. I didn't even get to see it. I went back to Florida in 2021 and I got to see it for the first time there, and then seeing it in California is really cool. It's probably my second favorite pre-show at the resort. It's really cute. In the station building itself, it was weird the first time I rode it. It was like I got teleported to Florida, which is totally backwards, because on my previous trips to Walt Disney World, I would think the opposite. When I walked into Galaxy's Edge one year, it was like I got teleported back home. So to be at Disneyland at home, at one of my home parks, and to feel I got teleported to a park on the other side of the country, that was a really bizarre feeling. And I'm sure that's a niche feeling. I'm fortunate enough to to be one of the probably few people who would have that emotion or experience. The station's super cute. I love the wall designs. You have the cute music humming and the train bell ringing whenever a train is dispatched. It's really cute. But once you're assigned a row and you wait for your trackless ride vehicle, that's when the action really starts. As I go through this experience, I'm gonna compare it a lot to Rise of the Resistance, because those are my two favorite trackless dark rides. I mean, they're the biggest American trackless dark rides. There's Ratatouille. I haven't had the experience to ride that, or I haven't had the chance to ride that in Epcot yet, but I did ride it in Paris, and honestly, I was not that impressed. So Runaway Railway and Rise of the Resistance are a big step up from Ratatouille, in my opinion. But I think it's interesting to compare how the boarding process is different from Runaway Railway to Rise of the Resistance. Runaway Railway just has a really long lap bar that's shared between 4 people, and Rise of the Resistance obviously has the individual seatbelts because of the drop on that attraction. So it's really interesting to see how much faster the dispatch intervals are on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Also, it's kind of bizarre how the same ride system has a totally different load setup. Rise of the Resistance, you're pretty isolated. You're in a small room there's only two trackless ride vehicles in that room, and there's 2 cast members. But you go over to Runaway Railway in the same park, and it's 4 trackless ride vehicles plus the steam engine, the Goofy cabin, whatever you want to call it, and you have 4 cast members, so it feels much more high energy. Rise of the Resistance, that loader area really plays up the tension because you're supposed to be escaping. It's a different context, and I just think it's really, really cool how the same ride system is used completely differently in a different context to tell a different story. I think that's fascinating. And you compare both of these to Ratatouille, and Ratatouille is really boring. The way you board Ratatouille, at least in Paris, I don't know I assume it's the same in Epcot. Boarding Ratatouille is the same as exiting Rise of the Resistance, which is totally, it's totally lame. I really appreciate how different it is between the 2 attractions, and I hope to see Disney continue to build these trackless dark rides to see how many different ways they would be able to recontextualize this boarding process. Moving on, once you're dispatched, you go into the park. It feels like a continuation of the pre-show. It's a cute little cartoon scene, and then you turn left and you actually see Mickey and Minnie like for real. Like they're animatronics, and they look so good. They look really cute. They look adorable. It probably helps that they're moving. They're super animated. I do kind of have a problem with how Mickey slams into the track switch. He like his car swerves and he doesn't react until he hits it, which is kind of funny. But you know that I'm sure that was a really hard sequence to program or whatever. But it's really cute, and plus you have Goofy right in front of you, especially if you're in the first or second car. Goofy is like right there, so it's hard not to look at him. So that's a total nitpick. I mean, it's a really cool scene, and those the two animatronics with their the how they sway back and forth to express emotion. It's really impressive. Plus the interaction between them and Goofy, it just it throws you right into the inciting incident, and that's pretty cool. And then right after that, the train splits apart. So you go from four in a line to basically two. You go from a line to a square basically with two in front, two in back. Moving on to the West room. This is probably one of the least dynamic rooms in the attraction. It's heavily reliant on projections, which I mean the whole attraction is projections, but there's no the only physical props in this room are the rocks in the center of the room, which is kind of lackluster if you compare that to later scenes. The Mickey and Minnie chase scene trying to recapture the train is really cute, and then eventually they get captured by vultures, I think, and then the trains move on to the next scene, which is a carnival, which is pretty cool. I mean, the transition from scene to scene is really high energy. Like you go from a park to an underpass to like a coal mine to the Wild West to a carnival, like a corny Pinocchio style carnival, like back to back to back. Like the energy is off the charts, which is really cool. It's like exactly what the attraction needed to be. I only watched the Mickey shorts after I had ridden the Runaway Railway in Florida, so it was really cool to see how they captured that high energy in that attraction and in a slow moving dark ride. I feel like that was one of my main criticisms when I first watched the POV. I'm like, this is supposed to be a high energy attraction, and the ride vehicles move at like 5 miles an hour. But when you're actually on the ride, you don't you don't really notice that because you're paying so much attention to all the detail, the dialogue, the energy, all the colors. It's a really colorful attraction. It might be the most visually appealing, which is kind of some people might get offended by that because it's mostly projections. Like animatronic purists might be like, but that's kind of how it is. It's really high energy. There's so much to look at. You can ride it 3 or 4 times in one day, and you could always find something to look at, which is one of what Disney rides should be, especially at Disneyland where there's so many locals just going to the park over and over again, just like me. Anyway, the carnival room brings back the practical animatronic with Mickey and Minnie on a hot dog balloon, and then they get blown away by the twister that jumps out of the roller coaster logo, and then it carries us all into the next scene, which is the next scene is the tornado room, which has a bunch of wind. It's the largest practical effect on the ride. I remember when I first watched the POV, like preconceptions versus postconceptions. My preconception was that looks really dumb. Like you go from a carnival and then it's just this black room with a spinning tornado. But when you're actually on the ride, you're like, I don't even know. It didn't bother me at all. It's just like, whoa, this is happening. And then after that, you get thrown into the island room. And I actually just noticed this on my most recent ride, but you can, if you're in car one or car two, if you're the first or second car to enter the island room, you can see the tornado throw Mickey and Minnie from the sky into the little leaf perch that they land on. And then you have to wait for the other two cars to enter the room before the leaves go down, and they're like, nothing can stop us now. And then the the volcano erupts, and you turn around and you hit the screen, which is probably my least favorite part. I mean, I don't really know what they were doing, what the goal was. I mean, it's really cool how the room transitions from an island to an underwater sequence, but I don't know, like the going over the waterfall, I mean, it's okay. it's pretty short, so it's not too much to complain about, but it's probably my least favorite part of the attraction. I think there was supposed to be an effect where the similar to Rise of the Resistance, the simulator, I think they were supposed to tilt you forward. I mean, there's if you look down, if you're in the front row and you look down, you can see a little pit. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's an effect that doesn't work or something. I mean, I would have assumed that they would have fixed it for the new version in California, right? I could feel like a little tilting, but I had to actively pay attention for it. Like if I was just watching the ride and not really paying attention to that, I don't think I would have noticed it. So I don't know if it's supposed to be a much more violent tilt, like how Diagon or what's that name? Escape from Gringotts, how that attraction tilts you forward. Like well that's a roller coaster, that's different. So like I don't I don't know what they were going for there. I assume I have to assume that that effect just isn't working properly. I don't know if they'll ever fix it. I don't know if it's like the Yeti at Everest where they went for something and then it doesn't work and they're just gonna leave it as is. I wouldn't be surprised with with how Disney is treating their parks these days. But anyway, you come out of the screen and then you go back into the same room and you have a squid that plays trumpet. If you're in the back, if you're in the last two cars to leave the room, you can see it play trumpet, which I kind of like. It's pretty cute. In the California version, if when you first leave that room, you can see it pull the drain and then that leads into the sewer hallway. I don't remember that in Florida. I might be wrong, but I think that's new for California. Anyway, you turn the corner, you go down, you watch the water drain from the sewer, and then you enter the city. The city has Pete jackhammering, it has Donald honking his horn, and the high-speed traffic. I mean, this room also has the effect where the seats buzz with Pete's jackhammering, and you can see the walls or the fake buildings shake with Mickey and Minnie on it. I think that's pretty cute. I mean, it's a really fast scene. It's probably one of the least impressive scenes. And then it throws you directly into Daisy's dance studio. That's like one of the most shocking transitions. I remember when I first rode Runaway Railway, I was totally looking to my right to look at Donald. And then you just enter this giant dance room. And it's like, whoa, what just happened? And so it really keeps up that high pacing, the high energy, the wacky cartoon zaniness. You know, you go from underwater down the sewer in the city into the dance studio in like an insane amount of time. I haven't timed it, but I would be shocked if it's over 30 seconds. It's pretty crazy, and that high energy, it kind of pauses for a second with Daisy. That's the point. The energy pauses and then you do a little dance sequence, which is kind of cute. You have the mirrors in front of you. I don't really like the mirrors. I don't want to see myself on a ride, or I don't want to see the sweaty guests next to me. But you know, it's there. And when the Congo starts and the flowers light up, that's a pretty cool effect. And you also have the Daisy animatronic, which is pretty cool. It might be one of the least impressive animatronics. I mean, she only really moves her arms. She's kind of static other than that. But after that, you would go back into the city down a back alley, and then you see Mickey and Minnie standing above the factory, and Minnie's yelling, "Don't go in there." And of course, we go in there, and it's a conveyor belt, and we're about to be crushed, and Mickey saves us. So Mickey and Minnie save us, excuse me. And then we turn around, and the train reconnects. So this is like the big climax of the ride, which is, I mean, it kind of comes out of nowhere, which again is the point. That's the point of the ride. But in California, I don't remember this in Florida, but it feels, if you're in the back car, I feel like you're barely in the factory. In California, the dance studio, you stay, if you're in the back two cars, you stay in there way too long, because once you get to the factory, you're in there for like, it doesn't feel like you're in there for that long, because you're in, and then Mickey saves us, and then you turn around and Goofy's back there. So it's like, what just happened? You know, it really feels like you missed like the big climax of the ride, which is kind of a bummer. I don't remember that being a problem in Florida. I don't know if I'm just misremembering something. but in the front you get to see much more of that scene play out. You actually get to see Mickey go through all the factory gear and then Minnie come after him. If you're in the back car, you can only really see Minnie because Mickey's already all the way up at the front. So it's a little strange. I don't know why the timing is weird on that. I would hope that they could work on that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's because of the show building. I wouldn't be surprised if the factory room is actually smaller in California than it is in Florida, because I know for a fact that the California version has less moving sets, less practical effects that change from the shift from the factory to the park. So I think that might be the main issue, but I'm not certain. But yeah, the changing is really impressive. I think my favorite is definitely the like bowl thing that changes into a carousel. That's a really cool transition. And then there's a drum that transitions into a fountain. That's also pretty cool. The gears, it's just a really cool transition. It's definitely better than the one from the island to the underwater scene. So it's a visually stunning finale, and then you turn around and Goofy's there. And then I kind of prefer the Florida version, how you just go straight into the park. But with our version, you have the weird hallway, and you have to listen to Goofy talk about whatever, how he has to press buttons. I mean, it's cute, it's fine. It doesn't make that big of a difference, and then I think our park scene is a lot bigger, so it's kind of a trade-off. I mean, when you transition from dance studio to alleyway to factory to park, and then to picnic, really back to back to back in the Florida version, I think that's better than having the action split by a long and boring hallway. It's not even like themed, it's kind of just wood and blue. I don't even know what it's supposed to be. Maybe a barn, I don't know, but then you just go right into a barn after that, so I don't know, whatever. Anyway, you end the ride with the picnic scene and Mickey and Minnie singing the same song, Nothing Can Stop Us Now. And honestly, I think that kind of makes the ride. It's emotionally fulfilling. Like, it's a unique feeling, you know? And the song is much more slowed down. It's much more emotional. And then you have the ukulele, and you can actually see Mickey and Minnie, like, and Pluto. They're all there. They all look great. The scene looks great. It's a surprisingly powerful scene, at least for me. I'm not sure if other people would agree. And then you see the fireworks. You see the lamps, the 2D lamps. I think that might be one of my favorite props, which is kind of weird to say. They look really cool. How the light is 2D, but the light bulb is 3D. It just looks super cool. It's an awesome finale, and I think it makes the ride. It really completes the story. And then after that, you turn right and you're back in the barn, and you get to exit, and once you get out of the ride vehicle, you go back through the theater, but this time it's much smaller. And the end is painted on it instead of the projection with the pre-show. And you exit through a gift shop and you're back in Toontown. So overall, this attraction is incredible. It is definitely one of my favorites at Disneyland Park, and in my opinion, it might make Disneyland Park the best Disney park on the world. For me, it's a toss-up between Disneyland Park, Animal Kingdom, and Disneyland Paris, but I think this might put Disneyland over the edge for me. It's an incredible ride, and it's a reason to actually go to Toontown. I'm not gonna lie, before this ride opened, I never went back there. It was run down, the colors were dry, and there were no rides for me. So I actually have a reason to go back there. And I mean, every guest in the park has a reason to go back there. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway it's like a four quadrant ride. It should be for everyone. You should give it a shot. If you're like me and you just watch the POV and you have not got the chance to experience it either in Disneyland or in Florida, you gotta give it a shot. Go into it with an open mind, and I promise you'll actually love it. I have ridden the attraction 4 times in Florida, and I just got my 3rd ride in California the other day. On my most recent ride, I actually had to wait in a pretty long line, and when I got on the ride, they were running way too many trains. And the reason I know that is We stopped a lot. We stopped at the ocean scene. We stopped in Daisy's dance studio for an awkward amount of time, and then we stopped in the factory. And we actually watched it kind of reset from the park back to the factory before Goofy picked us up. And then once we entered the hallway, we stopped again and we watched the Goofy doors shut. So we were kind of by ourselves for a little bit, but the Goofy audio kept playing. And then once the Goofy doors reopened, the audio wasn't in sync with the animation, which is really bizarre. So that kind of ruined the last scene. So I don't know why they were doing this. It's more efficient if you run less trains, if you're always stacking like that. So I don't know what they're doing. I hope that was just a one-time thing. I would think that that's the type of thing that they should work out in testing. And it was only a problem once, and it was my most recent ride. I know it's a good ride, so I'm not gonna knock the ride too hard for that, but it was just a little strange, and I hope it's not a problem in the future. I don't know why. I'm sure they're still playing with the ride, trying to see which combination of dispatch intervals and number of trains that would make the ride most efficient, but that was definitely not it. So to finish this off, I'm gonna rank the scenes. Just to go through the scenes chronologically to start things off, we have the track switch, next we have the Wild West chase, then we have the amusement park, followed by the tornado, which leads into the island room, transitioning into the waterfall screen, which goes back into the same room, which is an underwater room, which I'm going to consider a different scene. Then you have Jackhammer City, the dance studio, the factory, and then the Goofy hallway, which technically isn't a scene, but I'm going to include it just for argument's sake. And then you have the final picnic. So ranked. Those are 12 different scenes I'm going to rank. At number 12, we have Goofy's hallway. Again, it's not really a scene. It's just kind of there because the show building is different in California. You still spend a good amount of time in there, so I have to put it on this list. You spend more time in the Goofy hallway than you do in the sewer or the first park, so I have to count that. Number 11, you have the waterfall screen. I talked about this earlier. There's just not much there. Number 10, you have the Wild West chase. As I mentioned, there's not really any practical effects in here, which is why it ranks so low. The energy is high though, so I do appreciate that. Number 9, you got Jackhammer City. Again, it has the high energy that the previous scene had, but it does have the practical effects with Pete and the jackhammer, and of course Donald on his truck. Number 8 is actually the next scene. Right after that, you have the dance studio. I do like it better because it is a much bigger scene than the Jackhammer City, but it is a little awkward. It's not my favorite part of the ride, but I definitely get its point. It's a little quirky. It's different. That's kind of the point of it, to slow down and take a breath for a second, which keeps the pacing varied. It adds a different vibe to the attraction, which you can definitely appreciate. You know, if it kept going at the pace that it went from the underwater room to that point, it might have gone off the rails, no pun intended. Number 7, we have the tornado. It is the largest practical effect, but it isn't the most impressive. It is just in a dark room, so that's a little boring, but you know, it is a giant practical effect, and it is visually impressive. Number 6 is actually the first scene on the list. It is the track switch. It's a really cool introduction. It's really cool to see Mickey and Minnie for the first time. They look awesome, and their interaction with Goofy is great, and they look really animated. It is awesome. Number 5, we have the underwater room. So there's not really any practical effects because the Mickey and Minnie are hiding behind the leaves, which are now decorated as coral. So it's really impressive how it transitioned from the island room to the underwater room, and to see the squid projections. I really like the squid. I think he's cute, and I like how he plays trumpet. So that's why the underwater room is this high. Number 4 is the island room, which is technically the same room. It's a really dynamic room, how we see Mickey and Minnie fly in and then they land and then you can actually see them again. I don't even think they're animatronics. They're just static, but the leaves fall down to reveal them. and then you see the volcano explode just as you turn into the screen. Number 3 is the amusement park. I kind of rank this high because I love amusement parks, Walt Disney hated them, which is why they're like so heavily critiqued in Pinocchio. You can go ride that attraction, and Pleasure Island is kind of terrifying in that ride. And this kind of gives a similar vibe to that, but I like it. I like how the tornado jumps out of the coaster logo. As a roller coaster enthusiast, I think that's really cool. Number 2, you have the final picnic. I love this scene. It really brings the whole attraction together. It's the emotional core for me, at least, and it's just an awesome finale with the fireworks, the awesome animatronics, and it's visually stunning. It's awesome. And number 1, even though I do have some problems with it, I did put the factory at number 1 because the transition is just fantastic. The transition is much better than the island room to the underwater room, but because you can actually see how projections work in tandem with practical effects moving, it's really cool, and it's a great climax to the attraction. So yeah, that's Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway for you. Have you gotten a chance to ride? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you know the drill, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.